G'day there, ladies and millennials. Today we have possibly a topic that is sure to start some debates, and that is, of course, which console was the best for Pokemon. Everyone has their viewpoints on what is the best Pokemon game, best generation, or spin-off game, but nobody talks about the console side of it. With backwards compatibility, a console can include a wide variety of games we know and love, so instead of arguing over individual games, I figure we can argue over consoles. So how this will work is I will be going through the games on each home and handheld console on screen now. I will give my thoughts about the overall games, which will impact where it is on a tier list. Any consoles that are candidates for the best will be placed at the tier below, and one of them will be promoted at the end. After all, there can only be one best console. For both the games and consoles, I will not be talking about Japanese exclusives, or include any online requirements. This means no virtual console considerations, no DLC, or some Pokemon transfer systems. It is only fair to the previous generations to have an even playing field. Different version games will be represented by one of the games to reduce clutter, but will represent both games. With all that out of the way, let's start with the Game Boy. Okay, so the Game Boy does not have much to offer, but I know that Gen 1 lovers will still love it. However, even if you love these mainline games, you gotta admit that with backwards compatibility that there are better ways to experience these games, and so you can skip the Game Boy. Game Boy Color is next, and here we are starting to introduce some spin-off games, which is cool. Unfortunately for this Game Boy as well, the next handheld can play all these games, and the Game Boy game. So the discussion on these games will be later on in this video, as you can also skip around the Game Boy Color. Nintendo 64 is next, and this is where we can start to have some discussions. The games here vary in quality. Hey You Pikachu is more of a novelty, and while Puzzle League is fairly fun, it's more of a puzzle game with a Pokemon skin than a Pokemon game. There is nothing worthwhile here for Pokemon fans except some images, voice lines, and a short animated intro. Definitely skippable. Pokemon Snap is definitely a fun experience, however. Short but charming, it's a pretty fun N64 game that helps to give a different experience, even to non-Pokemon fans. Something everyone can enjoy. Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 is the main selling point for Pokemon on the N64, however. With the transfer pack, this is the best way to experience the mainline games on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Not only can you play the game from N64, but you can play it at different speeds, have an extensive storage for Pokemon items, have more challenges after you beat the game, and even a mini-game collection. While the N64 can't play the spin-off Game Boy Color games, the overall experience of Stadium 1, 2, and Pokemon Snap more than make up for it, so it will go in the very enjoyable console section. Game Boy Advance is time, and here we can talk about the spin-off games from the Game Boy Color. Pokemon Pinball is decent, I guess, but what you get with this game, you can get all that and more with the Ruby and Sapphire version, which is a pretty fun experience. Definitely a highlight. I never played the puzzle game, but I imagine it's somewhat okay. Let me know if it's your favourite, I guess. And of course, it's the trading card game, which is very fun indeed. I just wish we got another. I know that there was a Japanese exclusive sequel, but it would be nice to have another one that wasn't a mobile game. So besides the backwards compatibility games, we have Gen 3 games, which are one of the mainline games, in my opinion, really start to shine. The music, the visuals, gameplay, it is all very nice, not to mention the post-game Emerald. Mystery Dungeon is here, and while this does have another version on the DS, when talking about the DBA, you kind of have to involve this here. But the Rescue Team is a solid first Mystery Dungeon experience, so you can't go too wrong with the GBA. Unfortunately, you cannot transfer Pokemon from Gen 1 or 2 to 3, so that's a bit rough. Outside of Mythicals, you can complete the Gen 2 National Dex at least, but you can also do that at the N64. One major downside is that you have two versions of Kanto, free if you include Gen 2 postgame. Overall, I think with all this in mind, the Game Boy Advance is a very enjoyable console. GameCube. Now, I know that some people scream to the heavens about how good Colosseum and Gale of Darkness are, but I gotta confess that I haven't played these. From my understanding, these are very unique games, not the most necessary to play, but it doesn't hurt to have these in your collection. Pokemon Channel is kinda there, I guess. I don't know how many people are wanting to buy a GameCube for the gameplay of Pokemon Channel. It's more for the bonus to actually guess correct. Pokemon Box is kinda interesting. From what I can research, it's just extra storage and allows you to play only Ruby and Sapphire, right? And it sounds like a very low quality Stadium 3. So I wouldn't say it should be skipped. I will say it has some value, depending on your guess. Nintendo DS, one of the best handhelds of all time. Not only do we have the lineup of the Game Boy Advance to play with, which is a pretty high bar, but we also have so many new games here. For mainline, we have Gen 4, Gen 2 Remix, Gen 5, and their sequels, all of which someone considers the best in terms of Pokemon. Not only that, but we have the Explorers Mystery Dungeon series, especially Off Sky, which, at least in my opinion, is the best Pokemon has to offer. We also get the Pokemon Ranger Trilogy, and Pokemon Conquest. What is there not to love about the DS lineup? Well, we got Pokemon Dash. Yay. Another puzzle game with Jose. Don't know how good it is, but still. I also don't think the typing game is worthwhile. Has anyone even played this thing? Let me know, I'm genuinely curious as to how it plays. Needless to say that the DS is very high on my list. It is indeed a very enjoyable console. Nintendo Wii is next. Right off the bat, we can play the GameCube games, so it can only go higher for me. I don't know if the Pokemon Box backwards compatibility is doable with the Wii, or if it's only for the GameCube. If it isn't, then it does sound rude, but let's continue. Pokemon Park 1 and 2 are here. I don't really know those games, but a sequel must mean that at least some people enjoy it, so that's something. Battle Evolution is the Stadium of the Wii. Without online connectivity, how much does that have to offer? From research, you can't play Pearl or Diamond, for example, which makes sense given the Wii and DS are wildly different in features. Maybe the touchscreen can be replicated, but the microphone, for example, wouldn't work. Without that functionality, it doesn't seem to be too high on the tier list. Marginally better than the GameCube, I'm going to say that it has some good games. The 3DS is out, and this is where it starts to get a bit mixed. We have the amazing catalogue of DS games, and some honestly pretty good mainline games. Sure, they have some issues, and the revised Sun and Moon made the original kind of redundant, but how about the spin-offs? Detective Pikachu is apparently pretty enjoyable. I don't know, I haven't played it, but I guess it's pretty neat. We have 2 more Mystery Dungeon games. Gates to Infinity is probably the worst in the series, at least from what I've been told, and while I didn't enjoy my time with Super Mystery Dungeon, I do prefer the early games overall. Super Rumble Blast, while it was repetitive and reasonably simplistic, was still an overall enjoyable experience. Its sequel game, Rumble World, is absolutely awful. A pad game that has free-to-play time restrictions is terrible, and there wasn't a story for memory, just a game to collect them all kind of thing. It really brings down the 3DS rating for me, and I guess the Art Academy game is there. I don't know how much you get out of it, but I imagine it's not too much. If it teaches you how to draw all the Pokemon, then I can see its value, but if it's a sort of handful, then it's probably not worth paying for. Again, the mainline games are decent enough, and I guess so are the spin-offs. It's really the DS games that are keeping it so high on the list. I'm going to say it's a very enjoyable console. Wii U. Enough said. Fine. I'll just say that while it can play Wii games, it can't play GameCube games. I think it's safe to say that we can skip this console. And finally, we come to the Nintendo Switch. It could be argued that this isn't fair, as Legends ZA isn't out yet, but I think we can make a fair enough judgment call. I think this is the only handheld, in quotation marks, console where the mainline games are worse than the spin-off. Look, I know that these are enjoyable for some, but are we really going to be defending Brilliant Diamond or Pokemon Violet over Let's Go or Legends Arceus? Remember, no DLC. Sword and Shield is passable, but it does have a sour taste to it. I would rather play the new Pokemon set, or even the remake of Rescue Team, and I think even like the changes it offers. Pokémon Tournament and Detective Pikachu returns are kinda there, I guess, but really it comes down to BDSP, Violet, and Shield versus Let's Go, Legends Arceus, and Snap. Things like Pokemon Unite or Cafe remakes, for obvious reasons, are not being included. It really is kinda meh console. The only game here that I want to play is New Pokemon Snap. The rest are not what I consider to be the best Pokemon has to offer. And so, in all fairness, I will be putting the Switch in the has some good games category. And so now, we have a 4-way tie at the moment between the N64, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, and Nintendo 3DS. If you want to comment and try to predict which of these will advance to the next tier, I'll give you a moment to pause the video. Okay, so the console that I believe represents the golden age of Pokemon is the 3DS. Before you click off this video, let me explain. The other main contender was the DS, but when it comes to the differences, they both shared DS games, sure, so it's missing Game Boy Advance games versus 3DS. Put simply, is the Generation 3 games better than all of Generation 6 and 7 games? You get Hollow remakes of the 3DS, and while not the same, still pretty good. There is a slight edge to Gen 3, but it really goes the other way for me. So that's just Gen 3 remakes and Pinball versus Gen 6 X and Y, 2 more Mystery Dungeon, albeit not the best, Detective Pikachu, Art Academy, Super Pokemon Rumble, we don't count Rumble World. Then of course there is the mainline Gen 7 games, which are overall pretty enjoyable. I think collectively, they beat Gen 3, even though I enjoyed Gen 3. On the DS, however, you do have a solo case, and given the way that transferring works, you can transfer between Gen 3 and Gen 4 with only one console, which is good. And the post-game Emerald is better than the more recent titles, so that is why it's so high on this list. On the 3DS side, however, I would like to point out that you can experience every Mystery Dungeon entry one way or another, which to me is pretty impressive. While not being the most popular time to be a Pokemon fan, or even have the best individual games, I do think that if you were to get any one console and all its games that it can play, the 3DS is the best console for Pokemon. There are of course games that I haven't played on this list. You really expect someone to have played them all. But it means that if you have a different opinion on the quality of these games, I am willing to hear you out, and maybe update this in the future. But what do you guys think? Is this a reasonable list? Anything about these games do you want to add? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, thank you for watching.